Have you ever noticed that some people simply live to drain your energy? You talk, explain, prove with facts, and yet it feels like you're talking to a wall. Worse, they don't want to understand. They just want to win. That's where the error lies. One that may be destroying your peace without you even realizing it. Arguing with a fool isn't just a waste of time. It's a poison that erodes your patience, your energy, and even your sanity. And today, inspired by the teachings of Alan Watts, I'll show you why the smartest path is not to retaliate, but to leave the fool alone. What you'll discover here could change the way you deal with difficult people, and I'm not talking about fancy theory, but something practical that you can apply in your daily life, whether it's a family conversation, a discussion at work, or even a traffic altercation. If you've ever left an argument feeling drained, not understanding why you wasted so much time and energy, this video will open your eyes. I promise that if you watch until the end, you'll understand why silence can be more powerful than 1,000 arguments, and how breaking free from this cycle can give you a sense of control and freedom you've perhaps never experienced before. And I'll go further. What you're about to hear here could become a game changer in your social, emotional, and even spiritual life. So get ready, because what comes next will change how you react to the world. Now you understand. Arguing with fools only steals your peace and destroys your energy. This awareness changes everything because starting today, you have a practical key to no longer falling into this trap and start living with more lightness, intelligence, and control. This knowledge is invaluable, and so it's only fair that you help others awaken. Just like and subscribe to the channel. This way, you multiply this transformation and ensure that future videos reach you with even more revelations that will strengthen your mind and your life. You've probably been in a situation where you found yourself arguing with someone and after a while realized it was pointless. It's like talking and feeling like the other person wasn't even really listening. The truth is, there are people who don't want to understand, don't want to learn, don't want to evolve. They just want to argue, create confusion, and drag you down. And that's where the trap lies. Because in the heat of the moment, you think you need to respond, that you need to prove your point, show you're right. But when you realize it, you've already expended too much energy, you've already stressed yourself out, you've already gotten angry, and in the end, you've gained absolutely nothing. The fool doesn't come away convinced, and you just come away tired. This is the kind of situation that Alan Watts helps us see differently. He clearly stated that arguing with a fool is like playing his game, and when you play that game, you're the one who loses, because the fool isn't concerned with the truth. He's concerned with winning. He wants to have the last word. He wants you to wear yourself out trying to convince him. He wants you to sink to his level, and when you do, he's already won. No matter what you say, no matter how right you are, the fool will always find a way to distort it, to laugh it off, to minimize it. And the more you insist, the more he gains a foothold in your mind. It's easy to fall into this trap because our ego doesn't like to lose. When someone provokes us, mocks what we believe, or belittles what we know, the impulse is to react. The ego screams, "Show me you're right. Don't let it slide. Respond." And that's when you need to be alert, because every time you succumb to provocation, you're handing over your control to the other person. It's as if you're giving them the key to your peace. And let's face it, it doesn't make sense to let someone who has nothing of value to add control your mood and your day. Think about how many times this has happened to you, how many pointless arguments you've gotten into and then been left with that feeling of emptiness, of wasted time. Maybe you've even gone to sleep thinking about it, turning the arguments over in your head, rehearsing responses that will never change anything. This is the burden the fool places on you when you accept the fight. And the worst part is, while you're wasting your time, he's probably already moved on, ready to start another fight with someone else. Iduki. Fool doesn't care about the outcome. He just wants the fight itself. And here's the point that hurts the most to admit. Often we fall into this trap because we want to prove something to others. We want to show that we're right, that we know better, that we don't take any nonsense, but deep down this isn't strength, it's weakness. True strength lies in not needing to prove anything to those who don't want to listen. It's holding your tongue, taking a deep breath, and simply letting the fool talk to himself. This isn't cowardice, it's intelligence, because you're choosing where to spend your energy, and energy is the most precious thing we have. Now, let me tell you something you might never have stopped to think about. Foolishness doesn't just exist in others. Sometimes it manifests itself in us too. How many times have you defended something just to avoid giving in? How many times have you spoken louder just to win a conversation, even if you weren't entirely sure? It's hard to admit, but when we do this, we're acting exactly like that fool we so often criticize. And the worst part is, in this case, the trap is doubled, because you end up arguing with yourself later, trying to justify what you said. That's why Alan Watts's warning is so powerful. It's not just about others, it's about us too. Leaving a fool alone is, in practice, freeing yourself from the need to always be right. It's understanding that not every fight needs to be fought, that not every provocation deserves a response. It's learning to look at someone who only wants to drag you down and think, it's not worth it. This requires maturity, self-control, but above all, it requires clarity. When you understand that arguing with a fool is falling into their trap, you begin to see every provocation as an invitation to waste energy. And then, the decision becomes easier, to accept or not to accept this invitation. I know it may seem difficult at first. You might be thinking, but what if someone disrespects me? What if they call me a coward? What if I just come out on top? The answer is simple. Whoever needs to call you a coward or disrespect your intelligence to win has already shown the extent of their own pettiness. And therein lies the key. When you let the fool talk to himself, he's the one who reveals himself. He shows everyone around who he really is. And you, on the other hand, show that you're on another level, that you don't need that kind of cheap approval. This is liberating. It's like a weight lifted off your shoulders. You stop engaging in pointless battles and start to have more energy for what really matters. More energy for your family, your work, your dreams. More peace of mind to rest, reflect, and learn. And when someone tries to drag you down, you look, breathe, and move on, because now you know it's not worth it. And here's a request for you who have been following along so far. Comment on the word freedom down here, because that's exactly what you get when you decide to stop falling into the trap of arguing with fools. I want to see who really understood this message and is ready to put it into practice. But perhaps you're now wondering, if I shouldn't argue with fools, how can I deal with them when they inevitably appear in my life? This is an even more interesting point, and it's precisely what begins to reveal itself in the next step of this reflection. Have you ever noticed how some arguments seem to never end? It's like a wheel that spins and spins but never gets anywhere. This is the cycle of the ego, and that's exactly where the fool feels at home. He's not interested in learning, reflecting, or changing his mind. What he wants deep down is to keep the fight going, because your every response is like fuel for his fire. The more you talk, the more he grows. And this creates a trap that's difficult to escape because you start with the intention of clarifying, but before you know it, you're completely trapped in the game. The ego works like a motor that never stops. It refuses to lose. It refuses to remain silent. It refuses to accept the possibility of not being heard. And the fool knows this. It plays on this weakness, prodding until it elicits a reaction from you. That's why the fight never ends. Because it's not about reason, it's about vanity. It doesn't matter who's right or wrong. What matters is who seems to be on top at that moment. And this is a dispute that never has a true winner. Because even when you win with arguments, you lose your peace. How many times have you argued and even after presenting evidence, arguments, and logic, realized nothing changed? Not only did the other person not accept it, they even walked away laughing and mocking as if you'd made a fool of yourself. This is the feeling of being trapped in the ego cycle. You give your all, but the other person will never admit it. And, to make matters worse, you still ruminate on the conversation afterward, thinking of better responses you could have given. In other words, the fight continues inside your head even when it's over. This cycle is dangerous because it drains energy without you even realizing it. It's like sitting in a car accelerating in neutral. The engine revs, the fuel drains, but you don't move. The fool's ego needs this movement, and your ego, when fueled by anger or a desire to prove a point, ends up joining in. The result is a clash of egos, two people expending energy without any real progress. Now think about it. How many important moments have you missed because you got stuck in this cycle? Maybe a peaceful afternoon with your family, but it ended up ruined by a petty fight. Maybe a sleepless night, because you were thinking about how you should have responded differently. Maybe even friendships or relationships that were damaged by arguments that should never have happened. This is proof that your ego not only holds you back, but also makes you lose valuable things. And there's another detail that almost no one realizes. The ego cycle is addictive. Yes, addictive. You get into an argument, feel the adrenaline rush, respond, counter, get involved, and even after feeling bad, the urge to react reappears at the next provocation. It's like an invisible addiction, because the ego loves to feel in control. The problem is that this control is an illusion, because the one really running the game is the fool. He throws the bait, you bite, and presto, you're trapped. Again, the curious thing is that often the people around you realize this faster than you do. Those on the outside can see that the discussion is pointless, that you're just wasting energy. But when you're the one on the inside, you're blind. And that's where reflection comes in. Are you letting yourself be carried away by a vanity you don't even realize? Are you trapped in a cycle that only serves to wear you down? This is where Alan Watts's message becomes so powerful. He shows that the truly wise person need not be trapped in the ego's cycle. He understands that there is nothing to prove to someone who doesn't want to listen. And, contrary to what many think, this is not a sign of weakness, but of maturity. The wise person doesn't need to win an argument to feel whole because they already know the value of silence and peace. Now, let me tease you a little. Can you remember a pointless argument you've had recently? The ones where you knew nothing would change, but you persisted. Anyway, write the word here in the comments. Ego, because I want to see who truly recognizes this trap and is willing to break this cycle. It's an exercise in awareness that starts here. And as you ponder this, the next question arises. If a fool's ego needs nourishment to survive, what would be the most powerful weapon you can use against it? The answer lies not in the power of words, but in something that, when used intelligently, disarms anyone. Have you ever noticed how, in many situations, silence speaks louder than any words? It seems contradictory, because we grow up believing that strength lies in responding, in having good arguments, in showing our knowledge. But in practice, silence can be much more powerful than trying to win an argument. And here's a key point. When you choose to remain silent in the face of a fool, you're not losing. You're freeing yourself. Think about it. When someone provokes you, pokes you, spits an ironic remark, or tries to belittle you, what do they really want? They want your reaction. They want you to get angry, to respond, to play along with their game. But when you remain silent, you shatter that expectation. A fool doesn't know how to handle silence because it's like a mirror that reveals exactly who they are. Without your response to fuel the conflict, they reveal themselves alone. How many times have you responded immediately, full of anger, and then thought, I should have kept quiet? This regret happens because deep down, you knew you didn't need to waste energy in that situation. Silence isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. It requires self-control, maturity, and clarity of purpose. Not everyone can keep quiet when provoked. The natural impulse is to speak up, defend yourself, and counterattack. But the wise understand that many battles are won precisely when you refuse to fight. And there's another thing. Silence not only protects your peace, it also disarms others. Have you ever been provoked and, instead of responding, you simply stare and say nothing? The discomfort they feel is immediate. They expected resistance, they expected noise, but they received the opposite. This emptiness is disconcerting because it robs them of the stage they were trying to set. Silence is, in this case, the most intelligent response. Alan Watts used to emphasize that life isn't about always having the last word, but about understanding what's truly worthwhile. And silence, when used consciously, is a tool of wisdom. It's not passivity as many think, but an active choice. You decide not to respond, not because you can't, but because you don't need to. This is a level of freedom many people never experience because they're always held hostage by their own need to react. Silence also teaches us something profound. Not every noise deserves your voice. When you speak less, you observe more. When you remain silent, you hear what's behind the other person's words. And often, what you realize is that the fool is just trying to assert himself, seeking attention, or trying to mask his own insecurities. Silence, in this sense, opens space for a clarity that discussion would never bring. Now, let me open a parenthesis here. There's a huge difference between cowardly silence and wise silence. The first is when you remain silent out of fear, insecurity, or not knowing what to say. This truly weakens you. But the second is when you remain silent because you know your voice doesn't need to be wasted. It's the silence that protects your peace and shows you have self-mastery. This is the silence we're talking about here, the silence that Alan Watts saw as a weapon against chaos. Here's a simple example. Imagine you're in a group of friends and someone makes a bad joke about you. The automatic reaction would be to retort, mock, or even get angry. But if you just smile, look at the person, and say nothing, the effect is different. Those around you notice the difference. The weight of the situation falls on the person trying to provoke you, not on you. And the curious thing is that at that moment, everyone sees who was the fool in the story. Silence, therefore, is not just the absence of words, it is the presence of awareness. It's being so sure of who you are that you don't need to prove anything to anyone. This isn't easy because our pride always wants to respond, but when you learn the value of this resource, you realize it's worth more than 1,000 well-crafted arguments. Silence saves you energy, avoids burnout, and most importantly, shows that you're not controlled by the behavior of others. And let me propose something to you now. Comment below the word silence, because those who understand the power of this simple gesture have already taken a step forward in the journey of not being trapped by the noise of fools. I want to see who is truly willing to practice this in their daily lives. And as you reflect on this, an inevitable question arises. If silence has so much power, what happens when the fool insists, repeats, and won't let go of you? It is at this point that another, even more subtle danger arises, and that is precisely what we will discuss next. Have you ever stopped to think about how much energy we waste on things that are worthless? Sometimes we don't realize it, but arguing with a fool is like leaving a faucet running all day. It seems like little at first, but it gradually drains away your patience, your energy, and even your joy. By the end of the day, you feel tired, irritable, and drained, but you can't quite explain why. The truth is, this exhaustion doesn't come from hard work. It doesn't come from heavy responsibilities, but from pointless arguments that led to absolutely nothing. Every time you get into a pointless fight, you're making a terrible investment of energy. Think about it. We wake up every day with a kind of tank of emotional and mental energy. It's with this fuel that you solve your problems, take care of your family, work, pursue your dreams, and even truly rest. Now imagine wasting this precious fuel, arguing with someone who has no interest in understanding your point of view. It's like taking your rent money and spending it on a slot machine knowing you'll lose. The result is always the same. In the end, you leave empty-handed and even more irritated. The problem is, we often don't notice this wear and tear in the moment. You think you're just defending your opinion, showing the truth, not letting it slide. But after the dust settles, you realize you've been stewing over it for hours, sometimes days. How many times have you been unable to focus on anything else because you were reliving the argument in your head? This is the cruelest effect. The fool not only steals your energy in the moment, but continues to drain you long after the fight is over. And what does this cause? Anxiety, stress, insomnia. Have you ever gone to sleep and tossed and turned in bed wondering what you should have said in that argument? Yes, this is the wear and tear we don't see, but we feel. Your body is trying to rest, but your mind is still fighting. And the next day you wake up tired, unmotivated, unfocused, ready to get angry at anything. All because at some point you gave too much attention to someone who didn't deserve it. It's important to understand that energy isn't infinite. We act as if it were, but it isn't. Every response you give to a fool is a piece of your energy that you'll never get back. And worst of all, while you waste time and energy on something useless, you're failing to invest in things that truly matter. Think about the hours wasted on meaningless arguments that could have been used to learn something new, get closer to loved ones, or simply relax. That's the real price. It's not just exhaustion, it's a lost opportunity. And here's a simple example. Imagine you have 100 energy coins per day. You wake up, have coffee, go to work, get things done. Each task, each decision, each conversation takes a coin from your pocket. Now, when someone comes along wanting to argue, You take out not one, but several coins at once, and in the end, you have nothing left to spend on what really matters. This metaphor shows how costly it is to insist on wasting energy on someone who isn't worth it. The ironic thing is that the fool doesn't feel this wear and tear. He leaves the conversation as if nothing had happened, ready to find another. Victim, you're the one who pays the price. You're the one who gets exhausted, you lose sleep, you keep brooding. It's as if the fool has the ability to pull you into a ring where only he has fun, and you always come out hurt. And that's why we need to learn to be selective about who we give our attention to. Now I want to encourage you to reflect. How many times have you wasted too much energy on something that didn't bring you any benefit? How many times have you left an argument thinking you could have used that time much more effectively? Write your words in the comments below. Energy. I want to see who is aware of this waste and who is willing to protect this valuable resource. When you begin to see your energy as precious, it becomes easier to choose where to invest it. You realize you can no longer afford to waste it on just anyone. Life already presents enough challenges that truly deserve our attention. You can't waste them on cheap provocations. But this brings us to an even more interesting question. What happens when you learn to protect your energy and start using it wisely? That's when a new form of freedom begins to emerge. Have you ever noticed how most people live imprisoned by the need to react? All it takes is for someone to provoke, say a harsh word, or try to belittle you and you explode, respond, and get into a fight. This isn't freedom. It's emotional slavery. Because if you have to react to everything, you're not in control. Others are. They push the right buttons and voila, you dance to their tune. Now when you understand the value of not arguing with a fool, something changes inside you. It's like a key flips. You discover you don't have to prove anything to anyone. And this feeling is what we can truly call freedom. Freedom isn't just being able to come and go, do what you want, or speak your mind. True freedom is not being bound by the chains of provocation. It's having the ability to look at someone who's trying to get under your skin and simply decide they're not worth it. This is maturity, this is intelligence, this is strength. A fool wants you to stoop to his level, but when you don't play along, he loses, and you gain something even greater: peace. Think about how many times you've left an argument feeling bad, even when you won. It's because there's no winning a fight with a fool. The only way to win is to not play. And when you choose not to play, you experience a sense of lightness you may not have felt before. You realize you no longer need to waste time, that you can spend your energy on what truly matters. This choice is liberating. And here's the most important detail. This freedom is your decision. It doesn't depend on others. It doesn't depend on the environment. It doesn't depend on circumstances. It's you who decides whether to enter the fray or not. It's you who decides whether to empower the fool or maintain control of your own life. This is taking responsibility for your own peace. And when you do this, no one can manipulate your emotions anymore. Now I'll give you a practical example. Imagine you're in traffic and someone honks, curses, or tries to cut you off. Most people react. They yell back, speed up, and get involved. And what happens? The rest of your day is ruined. But when you take a deep breath, ignore it, and move on, you not only avoid the stress but also maintain control of the situation. This small gesture is a perfect representation of true freedom. You're no longer a hostage to someone else's anger. You choose how you're going to live your day. Alan Watts said that freedom isn't about fighting everything, but knowing when not to. This sounds simple, but it requires courage, because not reacting goes against the natural impulse of the ego. But when you experience the peace that comes from this control, you never want to go back to the old pattern. It's like discovering a shortcut to tranquility, a path that was right in front of you all along, but you couldn't see it. And what's more, this freedom inspires others. When someone tries to provoke you and you don't react, those around you notice. And without realizing it, you set an example of maturity. People begin to see that you don't let yourself be swayed by anything, that you have control over yourself. And this generates respect, even from the foolish, who, without reacting, loses interest in continuing to try. Now, let me propose something to you. If this message has made sense so far, comment on the word freedom down here. I want to see who truly understands that true victory isn't in arguing, but in not giving fools room to steal your energy. This word will be the sign that you're willing to put this teaching into practice. And as you ponder this, an even deeper reflection arises. If this freedom exists when you don't react, what happens when you start using this saved energy to move forward in your life? The answer may surprise you, because it shows that silence and self-control not only protect you, but also open doors you never imagined. Moving forward is one of the most powerful actions you can take in life, but at the same time, it's one of the most difficult, because our instinct always wants to settle the score. When someone offends us, when we feel we've been wronged, the immediate urge is to react, to show we're not weak, to have the last word. But when you fall into this trap, what happens? You get stuck. You keep going around in circles, stuck in a situation that should have ended by now, wasting energy and attention on something that changes nothing. True power lies not in fighting back, but in letting go. Moving on is a conscious choice that demonstrates maturity. It's looking at a provocation and thinking, this isn't worth my time. And suddenly you realize your life begins to make room for more important things. It's like tidying up your house. When you remove what no longer serves you, you make room for new things to come in. The same thing happens within you. Every time you decide not to carry on a pointless argument, you become lighter, more focused, and more productive. And here's an important point. Moving on isn't about forgetting or pretending nothing happened. It's about deciding that it won't occupy any more space in your mind. It's like closing the door on the past and saying, I have better things to live for. Because, let's be honest, how many opportunities have you missed because you were stuck in resentment? How many days have been wasted because your mind was occupied with a pointless argument? This is the price of not knowing how to move on. When you choose to continue your journey without looking back, you send a powerful message to yourself and others. I am not held hostage by what happened. I am in control of my life. This has a huge impact. First, within yourself, because the feeling of lightness is immediate. Then, around you, because people begin to realize that you don't let yourself be held back by nonsense. The result? Respect, admiration, and even inspiration. And here's the curious thing. Often, those who tried to bring you down become even more upset when you don't react. Silence is disarming, but when you move on and show you're unaffected, it deeply affects those who tried to provoke you. Because for a fool, the worst defeat isn't losing the fight, it's realizing you didn't care at all. Moving on is therefore the greatest victory. And don't think this is just about arguments. This principle applies to everything. It applies to relationships that didn't work out, to opportunities that were missed, to mistakes you've made. Staying stuck in the past only saps your strength. Moving forward is giving yourself the chance to experience new things, to learn, to grow. And here's the key. When you don't waste time arguing with fools, you gain time to build your life. Now, let me suggest a quick exercise. Think of a situation that's still lingering in your mind, an argument, a conflict, a provocation that shouldn't be there anymore. Imagine what your life would be like if you simply decided to let it go and move on. Just thinking about it gives you a sense of relief, doesn't it? That's exactly what you achieve when you realize that certain things no longer deserve your attention. Now you've realized how letting go of pointless arguments restores your peace, your energy, and opens up space for you to move forward with ease. This clarity is already beginning to transform the way you face everyday challenges, and it's only fair that this transformation reaches more people. Like and subscribe to the channel, because that way you spread this learning and ensure that others also awaken to this freedom. Write the word continuation in the comments to show you're ready to take the next step. And if what we've seen so far has already opened your eyes, just wait until you find out what's coming in the next video, an even more powerful revelation that will directly impact the way you live your relationships and protect your peace.